Have you ever paused to consider the silent whispers that death leaves in its wake? In an era where life was fragile and mortality a constant companion, William Shakespeare crafted plays that delve into the deepest corners of the human soul. His works Hamlet and Macbeth are not just stories, they are profound explorations of secrets, guilt, and the echoes of death that resonate across time. Today, we invite you on a reflective journey to uncover how Shakespeare's insights into these themes can illuminate our own understanding of life's meaning and the nature of our fears. As we navigate the complexities of modern existence, the timeless questions posed by Hamlet and the tragic downfalls in Macbeth offer a mirror to our own struggles with ambition, morality, and the unknown. This exploration promises to reveal the hidden layers in these classics, providing a thoughtful pause for those seeking wisdom in literature and a deeper connection to the universal truths that bind us all. A deep and gnawing cold settles over the battlements of Elsinore, a cold that has little to do with the Danish night. It is the chill of a truth held just beneath the surface of things, a wrongness that makes the air feel thin and the stone walls seem like bone. The guards speak of it in hushed tones, a thing of shadow and rumor, until it stands before them, armored and silent, wearing the face of their dead king. This is not merely a ghost, it is an answer to a question no one had yet dared to ask. The apparition that walks the castle ramparts is more than a restless spirit. It is the embodiment of a secret, a crime so profound it has torn a rent in the fabric of the natural world, allowing the dead to speak to the living. When it finally confronts Hamlet, its voice is not a wail of sorrow, but a low fire of purpose. It speaks of a garden, a serpent, and a sleep from which a king never woke.
The revelation is delivered with a chilling directness. The serpent that did sting thy father's life now wears his crown. In these few words, the world tilts on its axis. Claudius, the new king, Hamlet's uncle, the man who so quickly married Hamlet's mother, Gertrude, is not just an opportunistic successor, but a murderer. The serpent, a creature of ancient symbolism, represents not only the venom poured into King Hamlet's ear, but the poison of lies now coursing through the veins of the entire Danish court. The story of a natural death was a fiction, a carefully constructed stage play, and now the ghost has pulled back the curtain. This moment is the fulcrum upon which the entire tragedy turns. It is the transfer of a terrible burden. The ghost's command for revenge, if thou didst ever thy dear father love, revenge his foul and most unnatural murder, is a weight placed upon Hamlet's soul. It is a demand that forces a contemplative, philosophical young man to become an instrument of vengeance. The secret, once spoken, cannot be unheard. It transforms Hamlet's brief into a volatile mixture of duty and rage, setting him on a path of feigned madness and real despair. This dynamic is not confined to the stage. We see echoes of it in our own lives, perhaps on a smaller, less royal scale. A man I once knew, a quiet accountant in his late 50s, discovered a box of letters after his mother passed. They revealed that the man he had called father his entire life was not his biological parent. The secret, kept for over 50 years, did not arrive as an armored ghost, but on brittle, yellowed paper. Yet its effect was the same. The past he knew became a garden with a serpent in it. Every memory, every shared moment was suddenly recast in a new, unsettling light. The truth did not bring him peace. It brought him a disquieting kind of freedom, the freedom to question everything.
Like Hamlet, he was left standing in the ruins of one reality, tasked with building another.
The ghost's revelation in the play reminds us that secrets are not passive things. They are active, shaping our world even when unspoken, and their unveiling can be as violent as any physical blow. From the cold fury of the ghost's command, we descend into the quiet, shadowed recesses of Hamlet's own mind. The weight of his new knowledge presses down, forcing him to a point of existential crisis. He stands alone, not on the windswept battlements, but on the precipice of a far more terrifying landscape, the frontier between life and death. His soliloquy, beginning with the 6 most famous words in the English language, "To be or not to be, that is the question," is not a simple debate about suicide. It is a profound and universal meditation on the very nature of human suffering and our fear of the unknown. He weighs the 2 states as a merchant would weigh gold against lead. On one side, to be, to endure the endless trials of life, the whips and scorns of time, the oppressor's wrong, the proud man's contumely, the pangs of despised love, the law's delay. He lists the injustices of the world with the weary precision of one who has felt them all. Life is presented as a battle, a long and painful journey that one might understandably wish to end. Sleep, and by extension death, seems a welcome release, a consummation devoutly to be wished. But then he looks to the other side of the scale. On it lies not to be. And here the thinking man recoils. What is this state? It is sleep, yes, but in that sleep of death, what dreams may come? There is the rub. The fear of what lies beyond the veil is a force more powerful than the pain of living. He calls it the undiscovered country, from whose bourne no traveler returns. This single phrase captures the elemental human fear of the absolute unknown.
It is a border crossing with no visa and no promise of what awaits on the other side. This dread, this uncertainty, is what puzzles the will and makes us choose the evils we know over the mysteries we do not. This internal monologue is the quiet heart of the play. While the court buzzes with intrigue and plots, Hamlet is engaged in a battle for his own soul. His contemplation reveals that the greatest obstacle to action is not external, but internal. It is conscience, by which he means deep introspective thought, that doth make cowards of us all. The clarity of the ghost's command is muddied by the complexities of human consciousness. To act is simple. To understand the consequences of that action, both in this world and the next, is paralyzing. He is not just a prince of Denmark. In this moment, he is every person who has ever looked into the abyss and wondered about the meaning of it all. He is the soldier in the trench, the patient awaiting a diagnosis, the old man watching the sunset, all contemplating the same fundamental question. His words give voice to the quiet anxieties that thread through our own lives, the moments when we weigh our burdens against the great silence. Shakespeare does not offer an answer. He simply holds up a mirror to the soul, showing us that the most profound struggles are often the ones fought in absolute silence, far from the eyes of the world. As the philosopher Michel de Montaigne, a contemporary of Shakespeare, wrote, "He who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave." Hamlet, in his torment, is trying to learn. The ghost's secret is not merely information. It is a metaphysical wound. It infects Hamlet's perception of reality itself. Before this revelation, his grief, though profound, was directed at a natural, albeit untimely, death. It was a sorrow contained within the known laws of the world. Fathers die, mothers grieve. Life, however painfully, moves on. He is not just a prince of Denmark. In this moment, he is every person who has ever looked into the abyss and wondered about the meaning of it all. He is the soldier in the trench, the patient awaiting a diagnosis, the old man watching the sunset, all contemplating the same fundamental question. His words give voice to the quiet anxieties that thread through our own lives, the moments when we weigh our burdens against the great silence. Shakespeare does not offer an answer. He simply holds up a mirror to the soul, showing us that the most profound struggles are often the ones fought in absolute silence, far from the eyes of the world. As the philosopher Michel de Montaigne, a contemporary of Shakespeare, wrote, "He who has learned how to die has unlearned how to be a slave." Hamlet, in his torment, is trying to learn. The ghost's secret is not merely information. It is a metaphysical wound. It infects Hamlet's perception of reality itself. Before this revelation, his grief, though profound, was directed at a natural, albeit untimely, death. It was a sorrow contained within the known laws of the world. Fathers die, mothers grieve. Life, however painfully, moves on. But the murder introduces an element of cosmic injustice. The Garden of Denmark is not just blighted, it is fundamentally corrupted, its very soil poisoned by fratricide. Hamlet's melancholy transforms from a personal affliction into a philosophical state of being. He is no longer just a son mourning a father. He is a consciousness grappling with the fact that the entire structure of his world, family, state, love, loyalty, is built upon a lie. This corruption radiates outwards, tainting every relationship. His mother, Gertrude, is no longer simply a grieving widow who remarried too quickly. She becomes a figure of profound moral ambiguity. Did she know? Was she complicit? Or is her sin one of shallow-mindedness, a willful blindness to the darkness at her side? Hamlet's interactions with her become laced with a visceral disgust, a feeling that her sexuality is entangled with her husband's murder. The famous closet scene is not just an argument, it is an attempted exorcism. Hamlet tries to force his mother to see the ulcerous place in her soul, holding up two portraits, one of his godlike father, the other of Claudius, a mildewed ear, as if the visual contrast alone could shock her back to moral clarity. The secret forces Hamlet to see his own mother not as a parent, but as a flawed, sexual, and potentially guilty woman, a shattering psychological blow for any son. Similarly, his love for Ophelia withers under the shadow of this revelation. How can he trust in love, in innocence, when the world has shown itself to be so utterly false? His cruelty towards her, "Get thee to a nunnery," is often seen as a symptom of his madness, but it is also a desperate, twisted form of protection. He sees the court as a place of contagion, and Ophelia, by virtue of her obedience to her father Polonius, is already part of its machinery. A nunnery, in his tormented logic, is a place where she might be safe from the sins of men like Claudius and, increasingly, himself. He is pushing her away not just out of anger, but from a place of despairing love, convinced that he is destined to drag everyone he cares for into the mire with him. The ghost's secret has made him an agent of chaos, and he cannot bear to see Ophelia become another casualty of the rotten state of Denmark. He perceives the feminine as a source of weakness and deception. "Frailty, thy name is woman," a generalization born from the specific betrayal he feels from his mother, which he then tragically projects onto Ophelia. The accountant who discovered his mother's letters experienced a similar, albeit less bloody, corruption of his past. The revelation did not just change his understanding of his parentage, it changed his understanding of himself. He began to see traits in himself, a love of music, a quick temper, that had no precedent in the family he knew, and he now wondered if they were echoes of the stranger who was his biological father. The quiet, stable narrative of his life
was replaced by a disorienting collection of unanswered questions. He found himself scrutinizing old family photographs, searching for a resemblance he never knew to look for, feeling like a ghost in his own history. His relationship with his surviving siblings became strained, freighted with a truth he felt compelled to share, but which they did not want to hear. The secret, like the ghosts, did not just unveil a past crime. It detonated the present, sending shrapnel through every relationship and forcing a complete reevaluation of identity. For both Hamlet and this modern man, the truth arrived not as a healing light, but as a corrosive acid, dissolving the certainties they had built their lives upon. Hamlet's hesitation in the face of the undiscovered country is also a reflection of his profoundly intellectual nature. He is a scholar, a student from Wittenberg, a man trained to think, to reason, to deconstruct problems. The ghost's demand is brutally simple: kill Claudius.
But for Hamlet, the act is anything but simple. It is tangled in a web of theological, moral, and practical considerations. Is the ghost truly his father's spirit, or is it a demon sent to tempt him to damnation? This is a legitimate fear in the religious context of his time. To commit regicide, the murder of a king, was considered a heinous sin, an act against God's chosen representative on earth. In killing Claudius, would Hamlet be purifying Denmark or damning his own soul for eternity? This is not cowardice. It is a rational, if agonizing, weighing of eternal consequences. This is why the play within a play, the mousetrap, is such a stroke of genius. It is the perfect solution for a man of intellect. He cannot simply act on the ghost's word. He needs proof, empirical evidence that will satisfy his reason and conscience. He transforms art into a scientific instrument, a litmus test for guilt. The play's the thing, he declares, wherein I'll catch the conscience of the king. For a moment, he is no longer the avenger, but the director, the playwright, the observer. He watches Claudius's face with the intensity of a scientist watching a crucial experiment, waiting for the reaction that will prove his hypothesis. And when Claudius rises, calls for light, and flees the room, Hamlet is granted the certainty he craved. The king's guilt is no longer a ghostly whisper. It is a proven fact. This moment should, in theory, free him to act. Yet, even with this proof, the paralysis continues. The most telling instance is when he finds Claudius alone, seemingly at prayer. This is the perfect opportunity, the moment the entire plot has been building towards. But Hamlet hesitates again. His reasoning is chillingly theological. If he kills Claudius while he is praying, he might send his soul to heaven, cleansed of sin. His own father, by contrast, was murdered in the full blossom of his sins, sent to purgatory to pay for his earthly imperfections. To send his father's murderer to a better fate would not be revenge, it would be a reward. And am I then revenged, he asks, to take him in the purging of his soul, when he is fit and seasoned for his passage? No. He decides to wait for a moment when Claudius is drunk, enraged, or in the incestuous pleasure of his bed, to ensure his damnation. Here, the meditative philosopher of to be or not to be reveals a darker, more terrifying aspect. His intellect, once a tool for questioning existence, now becomes a tool for refining the cruelty of his revenge. He is no longer just seeking to kill a man. He is seeking to engineer the eternal damnation of a soul. This goes far beyond the ghost's simple command. Hamlet's own mind, in its intricate and terrible workings, has devised a punishment more absolute than mere death. The fear of the undiscovered country that once paralyzed him
has now become a weapon he wishes to wield against his enemy. This moment demonstrates how the initial task of revenge has mutated within him. The act is no longer enough. The metaphysical consequence is everything. He has become so enmeshed in the contemplation of the afterlife that it dictates his actions or inactions in this one. He is caught in a trap of his own making, where his overthinking doesn't just delay his revenge, but corrupts its very nature, making it something colder and more monstrous than a simple act of passion. The concept of the undiscovered country also resonates deeply with the human experience of terminal illness, a modern parallel to Hamlet's contemplation. A friend of mine, a brilliant physicist diagnosed with a degenerative disease, spent her final years not just battling her physical decline, but mapping this very frontier. She spoke of her illness as a journey into a new physics, where the familiar laws of her body were breaking down and being replaced by a new, unpredictable set of rules. Like Hamlet, she was acutely aware of the whips and scorns of time as her body betrayed her. She had moments of profound despair, where the desire for a consummation was palpable. Yet she did not succumb to that despair. Instead, her scientific mind turned towards the problem. She couldn't know what was on the other side, the bourne from which no traveler returns, but she could meticulously document the journey towards it. She kept detailed journals, not just of her symptoms, but of her thoughts, her fears, her changing perceptions of time and self. She was, in her own way, trying to send back a dispatch from the borderlands. Her conscience, her deep thinking, did not make her a coward. It made her an explorer. She acknowledged the terror of the unknown, but refused to be paralyzed by it. For her, to be became an act of conscious observation, a final experiment in what it means to be human in the face of dissolution. Where Hamlet's intellect leads him into a spiral of inaction and moral ambiguity, her intellect became a tool for creating meaning in the face of meaninglessness. She demonstrated that while the fear of the undiscovered country is universal, our response to it is not. We can be paralyzed by the mystery, or we can choose to engage with it, even if our only tools are consciousness and courage. Her journey provided no answers about what lies beyond, but it offered a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit in its final confrontation with the great question. Ultimately, Hamlet's tragedy is that he is the wrong man for the job. He is a Renaissance man of thought and introspection dropped into a brutal medieval revenge plot. He is asked to perform a singular, violent act, but his mind is built for infinite complexity. This internal conflict is what elevates the play from a simple revenge tragedy to a timeless exploration of the human condition. Where Hamlet's tragedy is that he is the wrong man for the job. He is a Renaissance man of thought and introspection dropped into a brutal medieval revenge plot. He is asked to perform a singular, violent act, but his mind is built for infinite complexity. This internal conflict is what elevates the play from a simple revenge tragedy to a timeless exploration of the human condition. Ultimately, Hamlet's tragedy is that he is the wrong man for the job. He is a Renaissance man of thought and introspection dropped into a brutal medieval revenge plot. He is asked to perform a singular, violent act, but his mind is built for infinite complexity. This internal conflict is what elevates the play from a simple revenge tragedy to a timeless exploration of the human condition.
The ghost's secret provides the catalyst, and the contemplation of death provides the philosophical core. But it is the friction between the two, the collision of a simple, bloody demand with a complex, contemplative mind, that generates the play's enduring power. Hamlet is trapped not just by Claudius's court, but by the labyrinth of his own consciousness. His tragedy is not that he fails to get revenge. He ultimately does, in a chaotic, bloody finale, but that in the process of contemplating it, he loses himself, his love, and his moral compass, becoming a casualty of the very question he so eloquently posed. He is a traveler who spends so long staring at the map of the undiscovered country that he forgets how to navigate the land of the living. The feigned madness Hamlet adopts is more than a mere stratagem. It is a desperate attempt to create a space for thought in a world that demands immediate, unthinking loyalty. His antic disposition becomes a shield, allowing him to probe the court's deceptions with the impunity of a madman. His language, suddenly fractured into puns, non sequiturs, and barbed truths, is his only weapon. When he tells Polonius he is reading words, 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 he is not just being dismissive. He is commenting on the hollowness of a court where language has been divorced from meaning, where pleasantries mask murderous intent. His wit is a form of guerrilla warfare. Yet, the performance is perilously close to the reality of his mental state. The constant strain of playing a part, of harboring a truth that could destroy him, of seeing betrayal in every corner, begins to erode the boundary between the actor and the role. There is a genuine torment in his voice when he laments, "Oh, that I have ever been born to set it right." This is not the cry of a cunning strategist, but of a soul cracking under an impossible weight. Consider the modern parallel of a deep-cover intelligence agent tasked with infiltrating a hostile organization. For years, they must live a lie, adopting the mannerisms, beliefs, and even the morality of the enemy. Their every word is a performance, their every relationship a fabrication. The psychological toll is immense. The agent must constantly monitor themselves, suppressing their true identity until the line begins to blur. They may find themselves thinking the thoughts of their assumed persona, feeling its rage or its despair. This is the dangerous territory Hamlet inhabits. His madness is a sanctuary that becomes a prison. He uses it to shield himself from the court's scrutiny, but in doing so, he also isolates himself from genuine human connection, as his tragic interactions with Ophelia demonstrate. He is so immersed in the language of deception that he forgets how to speak the language of love. The very tool he uses to uncover the truth becomes an agent of his own psychological disintegration, leaving us to wonder where the feigned madness ends and the real one begins. This internal complexity is thrown into stark relief by the figures who act as his foils, men who represent simpler, more direct modes of being. Laertes, upon hearing of his own father's death, is a storm of pure action. He returns from France, raises a mob, and storms the castle, his grief immediately transmuting into raw, unthinking rage. His philosophy is one of brutal immediacy. "I dare damnation," he cries, sweeping aside the very moral and theological concerns that paralyze Hamlet. He does not require ghostly proof or elaborate plays. Accusation is enough. He is willing to cut a throat in a church, a direct and shocking counterpoint to Hamlet's refusal to kill a praying Claudius. Laertes represents the path of passionate, honor-bound revenge, a path that is swift, bloody, and devoid of introspection. He is the medieval hero Hamlet cannot be. Even more telling is the figure of Fortinbras, the Prince of Norway. He operates on a different plane entirely, not of personal passion, but of cold political ambition. He is a man of purpose, leading an army to reclaim a small, insignificant patch of land from Poland simply for the sake of honor. When Hamlet observes the Norwegian army marching to its likely death for this eggshell, he is struck by a profound sense of shame. He sees thousands of men going to their graves for a fantasy and trick of fame, while he, with a murdered father and a stained mother, lets all sleep. Fortinbras embodies princely resolve, the ability to translate will into action on a grand scale, regardless of the human cost. He does not agonize, he commands. He does not contemplate the afterlife, he redraws the maps of this one. Both Laertes and Fortinbras provide a damning critique of Hamlet's inaction. They show that the world contains men who, when faced with a purpose, simply act. Their presence in the play serves to frame Hamlet's condition not as the universal human state, but as a specific and tragic deviation from the norm. He is a man of thought in a world that belongs to men of action. The court of Elsinore itself is a character in the tragedy, a place whose very atmosphere stifles direct action. It is a world of pervasive surveillance, where every corridor has ears and every conversation is potentially an interrogation. Claudius sets this tone, immediately deploying Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, Hamlet's childhood friends, to glean what afflicts him. They are amateur spies, their questions clumsy and their motives transparent, but they represent the crown's desire to penetrate Hamlet's mind. The master of this craft, however, is Polonius, a man for whom intrigue is breath. His default method is espionage, whether he is sending a spy to check on his own son in Paris, or hiding behind an arras to eavesdrop on a conversation between a mother and her son. The castle is not a home, but a series of traps and listening posts. This constant observation creates a climate of profound paranoia. Hamlet is right to be suspicious of everyone, because nearly everyone is, in fact, watching him. This environment makes his indirectness a tactical necessity. How can he make a direct accusation when the king controls all the levers of power and information? Any open move would be dismissed as the raving of a grief-stricken mad prince. This is why the mousetrap is so crucial. It is an act of public accusation disguised as entertainment, a way to force a private truth into the open under the glare of the court's own watchful eyes. He turns the court's voyeurism back on itself, making them all witnesses to the king's guilt. The disease of Denmark is not just the king's crime, but the court's complicity, its culture of sycophantic agreement and willing blindness. The courtiers, like Osric with his fatuous flattery, are symptoms of the sickness. They are the yes-men who enable tyranny by refusing to acknowledge the truth. Hamlet's struggle is not just against one man, but against an entire system built on a lie, a system that polices thought and punishes dissent. Therefore, the final bloody scene is not the culmination of a well-laid plan, but the chaotic collapse of a system under unbearable pressure. It is an explosion of improvised violence, where poison is exchanged by accident and justice is delivered in a flurry of dying breaths. Hamlet's revenge, when it finally comes, is not the clean, surgical act he might have once envisioned, but a messy, desperate, and impulsive slaughter that consumes the guilty and the innocent alike. He kills Claudius only after his own fate is sealed, spurred to action not by philosophical certainty, but by the hot poison running through his veins. In the end, the contemplative man is forced to become the passionate avenger Laertes was from the start. As Fortinbras arrives to survey the carnage and claim the Danish throne, the message is clear.
The world of deep thought, moral ambiguity, and existential dread has been wiped from the stage. What is left is the world of simple, straightforward action. The man who was willing to march an army for a patch of ground now inherits the entire kingdom. The tragedy is that Denmark had to be bled dry to make way for him, its greatest, most complex mind a final casualty in the purge. This pervasive atmosphere of mistrust fundamentally alters the nature of language itself within Elsinore. Words cease to be vessels of meaning and become weapons or shields. Claudius's public addresses are masterpieces of manipulative rhetoric, using phrases like "our sometime sister, now our queen," and "with mirth in funeral and with dirge in marriage" to smooth over the monstrous transgression of his actions. He attempts to legislate reality through language, presenting the unnatural as perfectly reasonable. In response, Hamlet's antic disposition weaponizes ambiguity. His puns and riddles are a form of linguistic rebellion, a refusal to participate in the court's sanitized falsehoods. When he calls Polonius a fishmonger, he is not just being nonsensical. He is accusing him of trading in flesh, of using his own daughter Ophelia as bait to trap a prince. Every word becomes a multi-layered chess move in a game of psychological warfare where true meaning is buried deep beneath the surface. This verbal sparring is the only battle Hamlet can safely wage, a constant, draining effort to assert his version of reality against the overwhelming power of the state's official narrative. The tragedy of Ophelia is deepened by this corruption of language. She is a character who has no authentic voice of her own. She speaks in the borrowed phrases of her father and brother. "I do not know, my lord, what I should think," she tells her father, a heartbreakingly honest admission of her own lack of agency. She has been trained to be an obedient vessel for male authority.
When Hamlet, the man she loves, begins speaking in a new, terrifying language of madness and cruelty, she has no tools to decipher it. And when her father is killed, the final authority figure in her life is violently removed, shattering her world. Her subsequent madness is expressed through language, but it is a broken language of folk songs and fragmented flower symbolism. Unlike Hamlet, whose madness is a strategic performance, Ophelia's is a complete psychic collapse. Her songs about dead lovers and lost innocence are the raw, unfiltered expression of a mind destroyed by the court's cruelty. Her drowning is the final, silent act in a life defined by the words of others, a retreat into the one element that does not demand she speak. Through Hamlet and Macbeth, Shakespeare weaves a tapestry of death's echoes, from whispered secrets to profound meditations on existence. These plays remind us that mortality is not merely an end, but a catalyst for introspection, urging us to confront our fears and seek meaning in the face of life's uncertainties. As we part ways with these timeless works, let their insights linger, offering solace and wisdom for our own journeys of self-discovery and spiritual growth.